The rescue in flames, the explosion shattered the morning peace of Kepler 4-4 to be like a hammer through glass. Captain Marcus Stone hit the dirt as debris rained from the sky, his enhanced combat reflexes taking over before his mind caught up. Around him, refugee settlement erupted into chaos as alien warships descended through the orange clouds like angry metal birds. All units. "This is Stone," he barked into his comm unit. Rolling behind an overturned transport crate, "We have multiple hostiles inbound. Civilian evacuation is priority 1. The settlement housed nearly 3,000 refugees from a dozen different worlds, all fleeing various conflicts across the Outer Rim. Most were harmless families, seeking safety in human-controlled space. But someone clearly wanted them gone. Marcus sprinted toward the residential sector as plasma bolts seared the air around him. The prefab housing units were going up in flames, their polymer walls melting like candles. Through the smoke, he could hear screaming in languages he didn't recognize. Along with the terrified cries of children, that's when he saw her. A small figure pressed against the burning remains of Habitat Block 7, her back to the flames. Even through the haze, Marcus could see she was different from the other refugees. Her skin held a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water, and crystalline formations grew along her temples and down her neck in delicate patterns. Zilithian, he realized. He'd seen their kind before, but never one so young. She couldn't have been more than 16, dressed in simple refugee clothing that was now singed and torn. Her large violet eyes darted frantically as she searched the burning wreckage, calling out in her native tongue. "Vera. Vera, where are you?" Marcus changed direction, vaulting over a fallen support beam. The heat from the flames would have driven back most humans, but his military enhancements allowed him to push through. As he got closer, he could see the girl was injured, favoring her left leg and cradling one arm against her chest. "Hey," he called out, trying to keep his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "You need to get away from here. The structure's going to collapse." The girl spun toward him, and for a moment, their eyes met across the hellish landscape. There was intelligence there, and fear, but also a fierce determination that struck him like a physical blow. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way that made his breath catch. "I cannot leave," she said in accented standard. "My guardian, she is inside." Vera went back for our belongings. As if summoned by her words, another explosion rocked the building. The upper floors buckled and began to sag inward. Marcus didn't hesitate. He scooped the girl up in his arms, ignoring her startled protest, and carried her to safety behind a concrete barrier. "Stay here," he ordered, then sprinted back toward the inferno. The interior of the habitat was a maze of twisted metal and fallen debris. Marcus activated his thermal vision, scanning for human-sized heat signatures. There, near what used to be the living area, a figure lay trapped beneath a fallen beam. Vera was an older Zilithian woman, perhaps 50 by human standards, though her species aged differently. Her crystalline features were more pronounced than the girl's, creating intricate patterns across her face and arms that would have been striking under better circumstances. Now she was unconscious, blood seeping from a head wound. Marcus grabbed the beam with both hands. His enhanced strength made short work of lifting it, though the effort sent spikes of pain through his shoulder where shrapnel had caught him earlier. He hoisted Vera over his shoulder and ran for the exit just as the ceiling began its final collapse. They emerged into daylight, seconds before the entire structure imploded in a shower of sparks and debris. Marcus laid Vera gently on the ground and checked her pulse. Steady, but weak. The younger Zilithian was beside them instantly, her hands hovering over Vera's still form. "Will she live?" "She's tough. But she needs medical attention." Marcus activated his comm again. "Dr. Cross, I need a medic team at my position. 2 Zilithian females, 1 critical." "On my way, Marcus," came the crisp reply from his chief medical officer. The girl knelt beside Vera, speaking softly in their musical language. Her fingers traced the air above the older woman's wounds, and Marcus could swear he saw a faint shimmer in the space between her palms and Vera's skin. Zilithian healing techniques, perhaps. He'd heard stories, but never witnessed them firsthand. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She looked up at him with those remarkable violet eyes. I am called Naya, and you are the human captain who saved us. Captain Marcus Stone. He found himself studying her face, noting the way the crystalline formations caught and reflected the light. You're hurt too. Let me take a look at that arm. Naya hesitated, then extended her injured limb. Her sleeve had been torn, revealing more of the crystal patterns that marked her as Zilithian nobility. Though she wore no other signs of rank or status, Marcus examined the arm carefully, his touch gentle but professional. Hairline fracture, I think. Nothing that won't heal with proper treatment. He looked into her eyes again. You were lucky. Both of you. Luck had nothing to do with it, Naya said softly. You risked your life for strangers. That is not luck. That is honor. The way she said it, with such simple conviction, made something twist in Marcus's chest. He'd been a soldier for 15 years, had saved countless lives in the line of duty, but something about this moment felt different. Personal Dr. Helena Cross arrived with her medical team. An efficient woman in her 40s whose no-nonsense demeanor masked a compassionate heart. She quickly assessed both patients and ordered Vera transported to the medical facility. The older one will be fine, she told Marcus as they watched the stretcher being loaded. Concussion, some cuts and bruises, but nothing permanent. The girl has a fractured radius and some minor burns, but she's remarkably resilient. Naya refused to leave Vera's side during transport. Holding the older woman's hand and speaking continuously in their liquid language, Marcus found himself walking alongside the stretcher. Drawn by something he couldn't quite name, as they reached the medical center, Naya caught his arm with her good hand. Her touch sent an unexpected jolt through his system. Captain Stone, she said formally, I owe you a life debt. By the customs of my people, this binds us until I can repay what you have given. Marcus started to protest that no debt was necessary, but something in her expression stopped him. This clearly meant something important to her culture. Just focus on healing, he said instead. Both of you. That's payment enough. But as he watched her disappear into the medical facility, Marcus knew that this was far from over. Something had begun in those flames. Something that had nothing to do with duty or protocol, and everything to do with the way his heart had stuttered when she looked at him. The attack on the settlement was just the beginning. In the distance, more ships were approaching. And Marcus had the unsettling feeling that this young Zilithian woman was far more important than she appeared. The way the attackers had targeted the refugee sector specifically, the professional nature of the assault, it all pointed to something larger at work. Whatever was coming, Marcus realized he would stand between it and Naya, not because of duty, but because in that moment of connection across a burning landscape, she had become something more than just another refugee under his protection. She had become someone worth fighting for. Sanctuary among strangers, the medical bay hummed with quiet efficiency as Marcus stood watch outside Naya's room. 3 hours had passed since the attack, and the settlement buzzed with evacuation preparations. But his thoughts kept returning to the young Zilithian, a woman who had looked at him with such trust in the midst of chaos. Dr. Cross emerged from the room, pulling off her surgical gloves. The arm is set and healing nicely. Her species has remarkable regenerative abilities. But Marcus, she paused, studying his face. There's something else you need to know. What is it? Those crystalline formations on her skin, they're not just decorative. I've run genetic scans. She's not just any Zilithian refugee. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. She's from the Asterian bloodline. Royal family. Marcus felt his stomach drop. How royal are we talking about? Her genetic markers indicate direct descent from the Zilithian ruling council, the one that was supposedly wiped out in the Outer Rim conflicts 5 years ago. Helena glanced back toward the room. If certain factions knew she was alive, ... they'd do anything to capture or eliminate her. Marcus finished grimly. That explains the targeted attack. There's more. Vera isn't just her guardian. According to the medical scans, she's Naya's aunt, probably the one who helped her escape when the rest of the family was killed. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Marcus had seen enough galactic politics to know what this meant. A surviving heir to the Zilithian throne was either an incredibly valuable asset or an extremely dangerous liability, depending on which side you were on. Does Naya know you figured this out? Not yet. But she's awake and asking for you. Marcus straightened his uniform and entered the medical room. Naya sat propped up in bed, her injured arm in a regenerative sleeve that glowed softly with healing energy. She had changed into medical facility clothing, but somehow still managed to look regal. The crystalline patterns on her skin seemed to pulse with a gentle inner light. Captain Stone. Her formal tone couldn't quite hide the warmth in her voice. Dr. Cross says you have been standing guard. This was not necessary. Maybe not necessary, but I wanted to. Marcus pulled up a chair beside her bed. How are you feeling? Like I was in a burning building, she said with a small smile that transformed her entire face. But alive thanks to you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Marcus found himself studying the delicate patterns of her crystalline formations, marveling at how they caught and refracted the room's soft lighting. He'd never been this close to a Zilithian before, certainly not one who made his pulse quicken just by looking at him. Naya, he began carefully, there are some things we need to discuss. About who you are, and why someone might want to hurt you. Her expression grew guarded. I do not know what you mean. The genetic scans don't lie. You're not just any refugee. Marcus kept his voice gentle but firm. You're Zilithian nobility. Probably the last of your line. For a long moment, Naya said nothing. Then her shoulders sagged, as if a great weight had settled on them. You know, I know enough to understand you're in more danger than I first thought. Marcus leaned forward. Talk to me, Naya. Help me understand what we're dealing with. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My father was Lord Theron of the Asterian House. My mother, Lady Celia, was born to the crystal singers of Zelithos Prime. Her fingers traced the patterns on her arm unconsciously. I was their only child, heir to both bloodlines. What happened to them? The consortium wanted control of our trade routes. When the council refused to grant them exclusive access, they funded a rebellion. Tears gathered in her violet eyes. The attack came at night. Vera, my aunt, she grabbed me from my bed and ran. I never saw my parents again. Marcus felt a familiar anger building in his chest, the same rage he experienced whenever he encountered the senseless brutality that plagued the Outer Rim. How long have you been running? 5 years. We have moved from world to world, always one step ahead of the bounty hunters. Vera gave up everything to protect me. A tear escaped and traced down her cheek. She could have lived a peaceful life on New Zelithos. Instead, she chose exile to keep a promise to my mother. Without thinking, Marcus reached out and gently wiped away the tear with his thumb. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Naya's breath caught, and her eyes widened as she looked at him with an expression that was no longer that of a frightened refugee, but of a young woman suddenly aware of the man sitting beside her. You don't have to run anymore, Marcus said softly, his hand still cupping her cheek. Earth space is neutral territory. We don't recognize consortium authority here. And if they come for me anyway? Her voice was barely audible. Then they'll have to go through me first. The intensity in his voice seemed to surprise them both. Marcus started to pull his hand away, but Naya caught his wrist, holding it in place. Why? She asked. Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know? It was a fair question, and one Marcus wasn't sure he could answer honestly. Because duty demanded it? Because she was under his protection? Those were the reasons he should give. But looking into her violet eyes, feeling the warmth of her skin against his palm, he knew the truth was far more complicated. Because, he said finally, some things are worth the risk. Before either of them could process what was happening, the door chimed. Marcus reluctantly pulled his hand away as Dr. Cross entered with Vera, who was moving slowly but under her own power, Nayavera said in their musical language, then switched to standard when she noticed Marcus. Captain, I must thank you again for saving our lives. Just doing my job, Marcus replied. Though he caught Naya's small smile at his modest response, Vera studied him with sharp eyes that seemed to see far more than they should. I think perhaps it was more than duty that drove you into those flames. Heat crept up Marcus's neck. Silithians were known for their emotional intuition, their ability to read the subtle currents that flowed between people. Apparently Vera had inherited that gift in full measure. We need to discuss your options, Marcus said, changing the subject. The settlement is evacuating, but I can arrange safe passage to Earth. There are refugee programs there, ways to start over. And if the bounty hunters follow us? Vera asked. And they'll discover that humans can be very protective of their guests. Naya and Vera exchanged a long look, communicating in the way that families do without words. Finally, Naya nodded. We accept your offer, Captain Stone, but only if you promise me one thing. What's that? If the time comes when protecting us threatens your career or your people, you will not hesitate to abandon us. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her fear. I will not be responsible for more death. Marcus stood and moved to the window, looking out at the evacuation ships being loaded with refugees. He thought about his duty to Earth Command, about the career he'd built, about the lives of the people under his command. Then he thought about violet eyes and crystalline skin, and a young woman who had trusted him, enough to share her deepest secrets. I can't promise that, he said without turning around. Because I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. When he finally faced them again, he found Naya watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Something had shifted between them in that moment, something that went beyond duty or debt, or even the growing attraction that sparked every time their eyes met. The transport leaves in 2 hours, he said. I'll arrange quarters for both of you on my ship. We'll figure out the rest once we reach Earth. As he headed for the door, Naya called out softly, Marcus. He turned back, noting that she had dropped the formal address. Thank you, she said simply, but there was nothing simple about the way she looked at him, or the way his heart responded to hearing his name on her lips. As he walked through the corridor, Marcus realized that rescuing Naya from those flames had been the easy part, protecting her from what was coming, while fighting his growing feelings for a woman who was destined for a life far different from anything he could offer. It would be the real challenge. Hunters in the shadows, the transport ship Meridian, cut through hyperspace like a silver needle threading through dark fabric. Marcus stood in the observation lounge, watching stars streak past in ribbons of light, but his mind was elsewhere. 3 days into their journey to Earth, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. You look troubled, came a soft voice behind him. Marcus turned to find Naya approaching, her movements graceful despite the slight tremor in the ship's engines. She wore simple civilian clothes that Dr. Cross had found for her, but somehow still managed to look like the princess she was born to be. The crystalline formations on her skin caught the starlight streaming through the viewport, creating patterns that shifted like living jewelry. Just thinking about our arrival procedures, Marcus lied smoothly. Earth Command requires extensive documentation for refugee placement. Naya joined him at the viewport, standing close enough that he could smell the subtle floral scent that seemed to emanate from her skin. You are not a convincing liar, Captain Marcuse, he corrected automatically. And what makes you think I'm lying? Your jaw tightens when you are not telling the truth. And you have checked the sensor readings 6 times in the past hour. She glanced up at him with those remarkable violet eyes. Someone is following us, are they not? Marcus sighed. There was no point in trying to deceive someone with her intuitive abilities. Possibly. We've detected intermittent contacts on our peripheral sensors. Could be commercial traffic, but ... double quotes, but you suspect otherwise. Resigned. They found us again. We don't know that for certain. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, the touch sending familiar sparks through his system. Marcus, I have been running for 5 years. I know the signs. The question is, what will you do when they reveal themselves? Before Marcus could answer, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Stone to the bridge immediately. Priority 1. Marcus and Naya exchanged a look. Stay here, he ordered, then caught himself. This was a woman who had survived years of pursuit by professional killers, not a helpless refugee. I mean, if you want to come, ... I want to come, she said firmly. The bridge was a controlled chaos of activity when they arrived. Marcus's first officer, Commander Julie Reyes looked up from the tactical display with grim efficiency. Contact bearing 27 Mark 14. They dropped out of hyperspace 12 minutes ago and have been matching our course and speed. Reyes noticed Naya and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Military discipline won out over curiosity. Configuration. Marcus moved to the captain's chair, his training taking over. Unknown design, but big. Twice our mass, at least. Heavy armor plating and what looks like military-grade weapon systems. Marcus studied the tactical display. The pursuing ship was sleek and predatory, built for speed and violence. Its dark, hull-absorbed sensor returns, making it difficult to get detailed readings. Professional work. Hail them, Marcus ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that made Marcus's blood run cold. Corvin Thox stood on what was obviously a warship's bridge, his reptilian features twisted in a predatory smile. The bounty hunter's scarred hide and cybernetic implants marked him as one of the galaxy's most dangerous killers for hire. Captain Stone, Corvin's voice was like grinding metal. How refreshing to deal with humans again. So direct, so predictable. This is neutral space, Thuck. You have no authority here. Authority? Corvin laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I need no authority to collect what belongs to me. Send over the Zilithian female, and your ship may continue on its way unmolested. Marcus felt Naya step up beside him, her presence both comforting and terrifying. He could sense the fear radiating from her, but also a spine of steel that refused to bend. The passengers on this vessel are under Earth protection, Marcus said formally. Stand down and withdraw, or face the consequences. Ah, but Captain, I think you misunderstand the situation, Corvin gestured, and the screen split to show tactical displays of their current position. You are one ship, alone in deep space, carrying precious cargo. I am Corvin Thox, and I have never failed to collect a bounty. The transmission ended. Marcus immediately began issuing orders. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Engineering, I need everything you can give me for engines and shields. Marcus Naya caught his arm as the bridge erupted around them. Do not do this. Your ship, your crew, they do not deserve to die for my sake. He turned to face her fully, aware that his entire bridge crew was watching. Naya, I told you before. Some things are worth fighting for, but not dying for. Please, her voice broke slightly. Let me go. End this before it begins. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The rational part of his mind knew she was right. One refugee, even a royal one, wasn't worth risking an entire ship. But looking into her eyes, seeing the pain and resignation there, he knew he couldn't give her up. Not just because of duty or honor, but because somewhere in the past 3 days, she had become essential to him in a way he couldn't explain. No, he said firmly. Absolutely not. Before Naya could respond, the ship shuddered under weapons fire. The lights flickered as emergency systems engaged. Shields holding at 87%, Reyes reported. But we can't take much more of this. Marcus moved to the tactical station, his mind racing through options. The Meridian was a transport vessel, armed, but not built for sustained combat. Against Corvin's purpose-built warship, they wouldn't last long in a straight fight. Can we reach the hyperspace limit? He asked. Negative. They're jamming our navigation systems. We're locked in normal space until we can clear their interference. Another barrage rocked the ship. This time, sparks flew from damaged consoles, and Marcus could hear the hull groaning under stress. Captain, his communications officer called out. They're hailing us again. Corvin's face reappeared on screen, no longer amused. This is your final warning, Captain. Surrender the girl, or I will reduce your ship to scrap and take her from the wreckage. Marcus felt Naya move beside him. To his horror, she stepped forward toward the communication station. I am Princess Naya of House Asterion, she said, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone on the bridge straighten. I surrender myself to prevent further bloodshed. Prepare to receive me. No. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her back. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. It is not your choice to make, she said gently. but her eyes blazed with royal determination. I am the last of my line. If I die here, it should be my decision. Touching, Corvin interrupted, but unnecessary. I am coming aboard whether you cooperate or not. The screen went dark just as massive impacts began hammering the ship. But these weren't weapons fire. Through the viewport, Marcus could see armored figures in spacesuits using magnetic grapples to attach themselves to the hull. Boarding party, Reyes announced grimly. They're cutting through the outer hull in 3 locations. Marcus drew his sidearm, noting that several of his bridge crew were doing the same. Security teams to repel boarders. Emergency bulkheads sealed. Marcus Naya caught his hand, her touch warm against his skin. If they take me, do not try to follow. Promise me. Instead of answering, he pulled her close, their faces inches apart. The bridge faded around them as he looked into her eyes, memorizing every detail. I promise, he said softly, to do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Before she could protest, he kissed her. It was meant to be quick, a gesture of reassurance, but the moment their lips met, something ignited between them. She melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck as years of fear and loneliness poured out in that single connection. When they finally broke apart, around them, the battle for the ship raged. But for that moment, they existed in a bubble of perfect understanding. Whatever happens, Marcus whispered against her forehead, know that meeting you was worth everything that comes after. Tears gathered in Naya's eyes. But before she could respond, the bridge doors exploded inward. Corvin Thok strode through the smoke and debris, flanked by heavily armed soldiers. His reptilian features split in a triumphant grin as his eyes locked on to Naya. Princess, he said mockingly, you led me quite a chase. But every hunt must end. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Naya, his weapon trained on the bounty hunter. You want her? You go through me first. With pleasure, Corvin replied. Raising his own gun, the bridge erupted in weapons, fire, and smoke, and in the chaos. Marcus lost sight of Naya when the shooting stopped and the smoke cleared. Corvin and his soldiers were gone, and so was the woman Marcus realized he had fallen in love with. The Heart's Gambit Admiral Rebecca Hayes stood behind her massive desk at Earth Command headquarters, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the smoking wreckage of what had been the transport ship Meridian. The rescue ships had found survivors, but the report she was reading made her blood run cold. Captain Stone, she said without looking up as Marcus entered her office, his uniform torn and battle-stained. Care to explain how a simple refugee transport mission resulted in an international incident with the Zilithian Consortium? Marcus stood at attention, though everything in his body language screamed barely controlled rage. Admiral, the situation was not what it appeared to be. The refugees we were protecting included Princess Naya of House Asterion. Corvin Thok was working for. I know exactly who was working for whom, Captain. Admiral Hayes finally looked up, her expression unreadable. The question is, why you chose to engage in unauthorized combat with a consortium-sanctioned bounty hunter. Unauthorized? Marcus stepped forward, his composure cracking. They were going to execute a 16-year-old girl. A 16-year-old girl whose bloodline could destabilize 3 systems if she were to reclaim her throne. The consortium has legitimate concerns about Zilithian succession. Marcus stared at his commanding officer as if seeing her for the first time. Are you suggesting we should have handed her over? I'm suggesting, Admiral Hayes said coldly, that personal feelings cannot be allowed to override strategic considerations. Your emotional attachment to this refugee has compromised your judgment. The words hit Marcus like a slap. Emotional attachment? Oh, please. Your entire crew witnessed you kissing the girl on the bridge during a combat situation. Did you think that wouldn't make it into their reports? Heat flooded Marcus's face, but he kept his voice steady. My feelings for Princess Naya don't change the fact that she's under Earth's protection. We don't abandon people to bounty hunters, regardless of the political implications. Admiral Hayes walked to the window overlooking the sprawling complex of Earth Command. Captain, you've served with distinction for 15 years. Your record is exemplary, but this situation requires delicate handling. What are you saying? She turned back to face him. I'm saying that Corvin Thok has taken Princess Naya to a consortium black site facility on Titan Station. Officially, we cannot act. Titan Station is neutral territory, and the consortium claims legal authority over Zilithian succession disputes. Marcus felt his world tilt on its axis. And unofficially? Unofficially, Captain, you are on administrative leave pending a full investigation into the loss of your ship. Admiral Hayes paused. What you do with your free time is, of course, your own business. Understanding dawned slowly. You're giving me deniable assets? I'm not giving you anything. But if certain military equipment were to go missing from our storage facilities, and if a certain rogue captain were to steal a fast ship and disappear for a few weeks, well, ... she shrugged. Administrative paperwork can be surprisingly slow to process. Marcus stared at her. Why? Because 16 years ago, I was a young lieutenant who watched the consortium murder an entire family to steal their trade routes. Because some things are more important than politics. Admiral Hayes moved back to her desk. And because, Captain, your Princess Naya is not just any Zilithian royal, she's the key to the greatest treasure vault in known space. What do you mean? The Asterian Codex. For 3,000 years. The ruling family of Zelithos has guarded the location of their ancestors' greatest achievement. A cache of technology that could revolutionize space travel, medicine, even terraforming. Admiral Hayes pulled up a classified file on her display. The neural patterns required to access it can only be provided by a direct descendant of the original royal line. That's why the consortium really wants her. Exactly. They'll drain every memory from her mind to get those access codes, and then they'll eliminate her to ensure no one else can claim the treasure. Admiral Hayes met his eyes. You have 48 hours before they begin the extraction process. After that, Marcus didn't need her to finish. He'd seen what consortium memory extraction did to its victims. Naya would survive physically, but her mind would be gone, leaving behind an empty shell. What assets are we talking about? He asked grimly. Hangar 7, the stealth corvette, Nighthawk. Officially, it's undergoing maintenance and won't be missed for several days. Admiral Hayes handed him a datapad. These are the access codes. The ship is fueled and provisioned. Marcus pocketed the pad. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me, Captain. Bring that girl home safe. And Marcus? She paused as he reached the door. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. 6 hours later, Marcus sat in the pilot's chair of the Nighthawk as it sliced through space toward Titan Station. The Corvette was a beautiful piece of engineering built for stealth and speed rather than firepower. Perfect for what he had in mind. Captain Dr. Cross's voice came over the come from her position in the medical bay. Are you sure about this? Breaking into a consortium black site is tantamount to declaring war. Marcus had been surprised when Helena volunteered for this mission, along with Commander Reyes and a hand-picked team of volunteers. He'd expected to go alone, but apparently Naya had made an impression on more than just him. It won't be war if we get in and out without being detected, Marcus replied. Checking the stealth systems one more time? And if we are detected, Reyes asked from the tactical station. Then we improvise. Titan Station appeared on their screens as they dropped out of hyperspace. The massive structure orbited Saturn's largest moon, its sprawling architecture a testament to consortium engineering. Somewhere in that maze of docking bays and security levels, Naya was being held prisoner. Marcus had studied the station's layout during the journey, memorizing every corridor and security checkpoint. The consortium might have superior numbers and firepower, but they didn't have his motivation. Passive scans show heavy security around the detention levels, Reyes reported. Automated defenses, guard patrols, the works. What about the service tunnels? Less protected, but they don't connect to the detention blocks directly. We'd have to go through the main security hub. Marcus smiled grimly. Then that's what we'll do. Sometimes the direct approach is the most unexpected. They docked at a commercial berth using forged credentials that Admiral Hayes had somehow provided. Marcus led his team through the station's public areas. It's just another group of off-duty military. Personnel on shore leave. The detention level was exactly as heavily guarded as they'd expected. But Marcus had learned something during his years of military service. Security systems were designed to keep prisoners in, not to keep determined rescuers out. They moved through the service corridors like shadows, disabling sensors and avoiding patrol routes with practiced efficiency. When they finally reached the detention block, Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. "Life signs in cell 77, Reyes whispered, consulting her scanner. 2 Zilithian females. Marcus bypassed the electronic lock with tools that officially didn't exist, and the door slid open to reveal a sterile white cell. Vera sat against one wall, her face bruised but her eyes alert. And there, curled on the narrow cot, was Naya. She looked up as they entered, and Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. She was alive, apparently unharmed, and the smile that broke across her face when she saw him was like watching the sun rise. "Marcus," she breathed. Launching herself into his arms, he held her tight, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling her warm and real against his chest. "I told you I'd come for you. I knew you would." She pulled back to look at his face, her hands framing his cheeks. "But you should not have risked." He silenced her with a kiss, pouring all his fear and relief and love into the connection. When they broke apart, both were crying. "We need to move," Reyes interrupted gently. "Security sweep in 3 minutes." They made it halfway to the docking bay before the alarms began to wail. Marcus grabbed Naya's hand and ran, his team forming a protective perimeter around the 2 Zilithian women. Laser fire erupted around them as consortium security forces converged on their position. "The ship," Marcus yelled, pushing Naya ahead of him toward the Nighthawk's boarding ramp. They were almost there when Corvin Thok stepped out of the shadows. A massive rifle trained on Naya's back. "Going somewhere, Princess?" Marcus didn't hesitate. He threw himself between Naya and the bounty hunter just as Corvin pulled the trigger. The energy bolt took him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the deck. "Marcus." Naya dropped to her knees beside him, her hands glowing as she pressed them to his wound. The pain immediately began to recede as her healing abilities went to work. "Touching," Corvin said, advancing on them, but futile. Love Conquers Stars 3 weeks after the rescue from Titan Station. The Nighthawk drifted in the shadow of an asteroid field near the edge of human space. Marcus stood in the ship's small galley, watching Naya work at the communication array with an intensity that made her crystalline features glow in the dim light. "Still no response from the Zilithian Council?" he asked, offering her a cup of synthetic coffee. Naya accepted the drink gratefully, her fingers brushing his in a way that still sent electricity through his system. "They are afraid. The consortium has convinced many that I am dead, and those who suspect otherwise fear what my return might mean." "Not revolution," Marcus said quietly. "Or war." She sipped her coffee, making a face at the artificial taste. "My people have suffered under consortium rule for 5 years. Some have made peace with their servitude. Others," she gestured to the communication logs, "others send coded messages of support, but dare not speak openly." Vera entered the galley, her movements careful but determined. The older Zilithian had recovered from their ordeal, but Marcus could see the weight of years in exile pressing on her shoulders. "The situation grows more dangerous," Vera announced without preamble. "Consortium fleets are massing at the border worlds. They claim it is a training exercise, but they're preparing for something," Marcus finished. He'd been monitoring military channels, watching as more and more ships moved into position around Zilithian space. "The question is what?" Dr. Cross appeared in the doorway, datapad in hand. "I might have an answer to that. I've been analyzing the neural scans I took of Naya during her recovery. The access patterns for the HFY Codex aren't just genetic memories." All 3 of them turned to stare at her. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "They're a living map. The crystalline formations in Naya's nervous system aren't just decorative. They're a biological computer storing the location and access codes for something far more important than treasure." Helena's expression was grim. "They're the key to the eternal archive." Vera's coffee cup shattered on the floor. "That is impossible. The archive is myth, legend." "What's the eternal archive?" Marcus asked. "According to Zilithian texts, it's a repository of knowledge from before their species achieved space travel," Dr. Cross explained. Technology, science, philosophy, art, everything their civilization accumulated over thousands of years. Naya stood slowly, her hand moving unconsciously to touch the crystalline patterns at her temple. If such a thing existed, it would be ... The most valuable collection of knowledge in the galaxy, Marcus finished. No wonder the consortium wants it. 8. There's more, Helena continued. The neural patterns suggest the archive isn't just a library, it's a manufacturing facility. Whatever the ancient Zilithians knew about technology, it's still there, waiting to be accessed. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Advanced technology that could revolutionize civilization, controlled by whoever possessed the access key. Which meant controlling Naya. They have to find it first, he said. Marcus, no. Naya caught his arm. This is exactly what they want. If I attempt to access the archive, I will be walking into their trap. And if we don't try, they'll eventually track us down and take it anyway. Marcus pulled up a star chart on the main display. At least this way, we control the timing. Vera studied the readouts with growing amazement. The neural patterns point to the Valdris Nebula. If the archive truly exists, it lies at the heart of that storm. The Valdris Nebula was notorious among spacers, a churning mass of ionized gas and electromagnetic interference that made navigation nearly impossible. Ships that entered rarely returned, and those that did spoke of strange phenomena that couldn't be explained by conventional science. It's perfect, Marcus mused. A natural fortress that's protected the archive for millennia. Or a death trap that's killed everyone who tried to find it, Dr. Cross pointed out, before anyone could respond. Proximity alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Marcus raced to the bridge, the others closed behind. Commander Reyes was already at her station, face grim. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, she reported. Consortium battle group. Heavy configuration. 12 ships at least. The main screen lit up with tactical displays showing the approaching fleet. At their head was a massive dreadnought that Marcus recognized from intelligence files. The Dominion, he breathed. Admiral Kale's flagship. As if summoned by his words, the screen changed to show a communication feed. Admiral Thane Kale sat in his command chair, a man whose cold efficiency had earned him a reputation as the consortium's most ruthless enforcer. Captain Stone, Kale's voice was like ice. You've caused considerable trouble for very little gain. Return our property, and I might allow you to live long enough to stand trial. Princess Naya is not property, Marcus replied evenly. She's under Earth protection. Earth. Kale laughed. Captain, you are 300 light-years from the nearest Earth outpost. Your government has officially disavowed your actions. You are alone. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He'd known this might happen, but hearing it confirmed was still a blow. They truly were on their own now. Admiral Naya stepped into view of the camera, her royal bearing evident despite her simple clothes. I am Princess Naya of House Asterion, rightful heir to the Zilithian throne. By what authority do you claim jurisdiction over my person? By the authority of superior firepower, Your Highness. Kale's smile was predatory. You have 10 minutes to surrender before I reduce that pathetic corvette to space dust. The transmission ended. Marcus looked around his bridge at the small crew that had followed him into exile. Good people who deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle. Set course for the Valdris Nebula, he ordered. Sir. Reyes looked startled. That's suicide. The interference will knock out our navigation, our shields, everything. Maybe, but it's our only chance. Marcus met Naya's eyes across the bridge. If we're going to die, let's at least die trying to accomplish something meaningful. The Nighthawk leaped forward, racing toward the roiling wall of gas and energy that marked the nebula's edge. Behind them, the consortium fleet gave chase, their superior numbers allowing them to quickly close the distance. 30 seconds to nebula entry, Reyes announced. Consortium-led elements will intercept in 25. Marcus watched the tactical display as enemy ships moved into firing position. Emergency power to engines. All hands brace for. The ship shuddered as the first energy blasts struck their shields. Warning lights flashed as systems began to overload. Shields at 60%, someone called out. 10 seconds to nebula boundary. More hits. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency illumination, casting everything in hellish red shadows, and then they plunged into the Valdris Nebula. The universe exploded around them in a symphony of color and chaos. Lightning arced between gas clouds the size of solar systems, while gravitational anomalies twisted space into impossible geometries. The Nighthawk bucked and rolled like a ship in a storm, its hull groaning under stress as it was never designed to handle. "Navigation is gone," Reyes shouted over the howling interference. "Sensors are useless. We're flying blind, not blind," Naya said softly. She had moved to the center of the bridge, her eyes closed, the crystalline patterns on her skin blazing with inner light. "I can feel it. The archive. It calls to me." She began to sing, her voice somehow cutting through the electromagnetic chaos. Not words, but pure harmony that seemed to resonate with the nebula itself. The swirling gases around them began to part, creating a corridor of relative calm. "Follow the music," Marcus ordered, taking manual control of the ship. "Trust her." For hours they flew through the nebula's heart, guided only by Naya's song and Marcus's pilot instincts. Behind them, the consortium fleet had been forced to turn back, their heavier ships unable to navigate the chaotic environment. Finally, impossibly, they emerged into a pocket of clear space. And there, floating in the center like a jewel in a cosmic crown, was the Eternal Archive. It was beautiful beyond description. A crystalline structure, the size of a small moon. Its faceted surfaces catching and reflecting the nebula's light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Technology and art merged into something that transcended both. "My ancestors built this," Naya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Before we learned to travel between stars, before we lost ourselves to politics and war, this is what we were meant to be." They docked at what appeared to be a receiving bay, though no ship had approached this place in over 1,000 years. The archive systems activated automatically as Naya stepped aboard, recognizing her genetic signature. What they found inside defied comprehension. Vast halls filled with knowledge beyond imagining. Medical techniques that could cure any disease. Engineering principles that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. Art that spoke directly to the soul. "This changes everything," Dr. Cross breathed as she scanned the medical archives. "Cancer, aging, genetic disorders. It's all here. The solutions to problems we haven't even discovered yet." But Marcus was watching Naya as she interfaced with the central core, her consciousness merging with the archive's vast intelligence. The weight of eons pressed down on her, and he could see her struggling to maintain her individual identity. "That's enough," he said firmly, disconnecting her from the system. "We have what we came for." Aja collapsed into his arms, exhausted but triumphant. "I saw it all," she whispered. "My people's true history. We were explorers once, scientists and artists. We can be that again." They had 3 days in the archive before long-range sensors detected the approaching consortium fleet. Admiral Kale had found a way through the nebula, and this time he'd brought everything. "We can't fight them," Reyes reported grimly. 50 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. "Don't have to fight them," Marcus replied. He turned to Naya, who stood at the archive's control center. "Can you transmit the knowledge? Broadcast it across the galaxy. To every inhabited world, every species," she confirmed. "Once this information is public, no one in power can control it. Do it." Naya's hands danced across crystalline interfaces that responded to her touch like living things. Across the galaxy, communication networks suddenly overflowed with data. Medical knowledge, technological blueprints, artistic treasures, philosophical insights. Everything the ancient Zalithians had learned was freely shared with all who wished to receive it. When Admiral Kale's fleet finally arrived at the archive, they found the Nighthawk waiting for them. But the mission had already succeeded. "You've doomed the galaxy to chaos," Kale accused during their final communication. "No," Marcus replied, his arm around Naya as they stood together on the bridge. "We've given it the chance to grow beyond what any of us imagined possible." The consortium fleet opened fire, but instead of the expected destruction, something extraordinary happened. The archive's defensive systems activated, not to destroy the attackers, but to protect them. Ancient Zalithian technology wrapped around each ship like a gentle hand, disabling weapons while leaving life support untouched. The archive was never meant to be a weapon. Naya explained as shocked consortium officers found themselves floating helpless in space. It was built to preserve knowledge and protect life. All life. In the end, there was no battle. The revelation of the archive's true nature, combined with the free distribution of its knowledge, sparked revolutions across the galaxy. Not violent uprisings, but revolutions of the mind and spirit. Species that had warred for millennia found common ground in shared wonder. The Zalithian people, inspired by their princess's courage, rose up and reclaimed their independence, not through violence, but through the irresistible power of truth, and in the quiet moments between negotiations and ceremonies. Marcus and Naya found time to plan their wedding. It would be a simple affair, they decided. Just two people who had found love in the midst of chaos, promising to face whatever came next together. Do you regret it? Naya asked one evening as they stood together on the archive's observation deck, watching stars wheel overhead. Giving up your military career? Your old life? Marcus considered the question seriously. He thought about the awards and commendations he'd left behind, the promotions he'd never receive, the comfortable certainty of military life. The only thing I regret, he said finally, pulling her close, is that it took a galaxy-spanning crisis for me to find you. He laughed, the sound like silver bells in the cosmic wind. Perhaps that is what love is. Finding the one person worth changing everything for? As if in response to her words, the archive pulsed with gentle light, its ancient systems recording their conversation for some future generation to discover. A reminder that love, like knowledge, is meant to be shared. The stars watched over them, as they had watched over countless lovers throughout history. But never before had love carried such consequences, touching not just a hearts, but the destiny of an entire galaxy. In the end, Marcus realized that made their love not heavier, but more precious. Some things truly were worth fighting for, worth changing the universe for, worth everything.